The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather, second day of the new year. And I'm Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting the show this evening. On the satellite imagery, we've got a lot of moisture rolling northward. One system moving in, and that brought the strong gusty winds in across southern Alaska earlier today, diminishing this afternoon. And winds also coming down along the Alaska Range, but still gusting about 40 to 50 miles an hour late Tuesday afternoon, or mid-afternoon Tuesday here in the Delta Junction area. Otherwise, low pressure here over in the eastern Bering Sea, or right near the coastline there, having come northward, producing snow from northern Bristol Bay back in across areas of the southwest interior on out to the coast. Cooler air coming down, so snow showers about to start there in the Pribilof Islands, or temperature will be low enough for the precipitation to fall as snow, as it's doing out here over Shemya and the Adak area, with the colder air coming in from the northwest there out of the Russian Far East Kamchatka Peninsula. Adak reporting some light snow this afternoon, and Shemya, though, right on the edge of things back to the west and to the north there. But we'll probably get into some later today. The Alaska Peninsula, rain for the most part, light rain falling today, and as much as half an inch of rain falling across upslope areas of south central Alaska along the North Gulf Coast today. And we've got a weak low coming northward here in the Gulf of Alaska, and a lot of moisture with that, spreading rain into the southeast coast today, with the main front back to the west. Actually, two batches. There's a batch of moisture right now, or during the afternoon Tuesday, coming up, and then a little bit of a break, and then the moisture with this, but they'll probably both link up this evening by the time they come in, so you won't really see much of a break over the southeast coast or the North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, the low back to the west here, that's continues to weaken as it pulled northward, but producing a widespread area of light snow here from northern Bristol Bay and across areas of the Kuskokwim Valley, over to about the Alaska Range, and then it begins to mix with the precipitation there as warmer temperatures turn it to rain there down the west side of Cook Inlet, Kachemak Bay into Kodiak Island with some showers there. Dry today here through Cook Inlet into the Susitna and Matanuska valleys, with the rain falling along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, Whittier down to Seward, Portage, and those areas carrying some rain today, and light snow here. Seward Peninsula into the Selkirk Valley, across the Kobuk, northern Koyukuk to the Brooks Range, mostly just light snow up through this area. And this system here weakening and pulling off or exiting the area. So the winds, which were gusting over 50 miles an hour earlier today at Kaktovik, those have come down this afternoon. Still carrying some light snow though, but it's ended over at Dead Horse. Generally cloudy conditions back to the west, a little breezy here along the western Arctic coast, down to about Point Hope, maybe Point Ley. And not too bad on the winds, though, for the northern Bering Sea here, especially from the Strait down to St. Lawrence Island. Not much in the way of wind, clouds, but not precipitation free for the most part. This low over the western Bering, that pulling the colder air down with snow showers in across the western and already into the central Aleutian areas of the mixture of conditions here with this trough as it swings through the Fox Islands there. Wetter conditions, and that'll continue to move off to the east-northeast. Notice the colder air will come in and drop snow levels down to sea level. Forecast for tonight, there's that trough edging northeastward there, so it's going to keep it unsettled across the Alaska Peninsula. Wind's not bad at all there, ridging here over the Aleutians. Dry conditions, drier, and looks like most of the showers will lift up to the north now, so those will be ending as this next system approaches, kind of the break between the two. And that won't affect the area there until probably tomorrow, or definitely tomorrow. This front pushes in toward the Panhandle, so rain all night tonight, all the way from the Queen Charlottes up to Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, probably in toward White Pass, and then back along the North Gulf Coast here. It stays wet. Prince William Sound, depending on your elevation, mixture of precipitation, and then northward here tonight, areas of snow, up to possibly, well, into the Talkeetnas, areas of the Copper River Basin, maybe the Wrangels, but dry in the eastern interior, especially from the Brooks or the Alaska range across the Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, pretty dry pattern, and this low moves northward there to the Seward Peninsula, taking snow with it all the way up to the western Brooks Range and continuing eastward along the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range. Snow showery back to the west there with lighter stuff and maybe a little bit of an increase in the breeze there. St. Lawrence Island back up through the Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea. Kind of a break here along the southwest coast ahead of this trough that'll bring rain or just plain snow showers possibly to the Pribilof Islands during the night tonight. And then we've got this very weak low, 1,004 millibars, not a lot of wind with it at all as it comes up toward Prince William Sound. And for the forecast for tomorrow, this front kind of hangs itself up along the panhandle, so a wet day from start to finish tomorrow with breezy conditions after the gale force winds tonight, and winds will be lighter there tomorrow here along the coastal areas and not really all that strong over the inside waters, but it'll be wet again over this area. Should be a cloudy day, variably cloudy or mostly cloudy Prince William Sound, maybe a little more clearing for Cook Inlet down into the toward Kodiak. Could also be some areas of snow showers at times coming in the area with cooler temperatures that are still back to the west here. So snow in the northwest part of the state, actually from the western Arctic coast southward through the northwest valleys, will be more showery here across the deltas, and that'll extend back out into the northern Bering Sea. Isolated showers here for the Alaska Peninsula, and gale force winds back in the scene now with rain from the Shimiatu area pushing eastward here, just beginning to push in toward Nikolsky late in the day tomorrow. And then for Saturday, so definitely that'll roll into that area, Fox Islands tomorrow evening, and by Thursday afternoon will be affecting the Alaska Peninsula and the Pribilofs, warm air coming northward here, so all this will be in the form of rain, even becoming rain along the southwest coast there, a little mixed condition inland, a short distance inland, and that'll also affect St. Lawrence Island, increase in the winds and a snow trending toward rain and snow throughout the afternoon. Wet back in the western areas with a couple of low centers back there, and weak high pressure here over the eastern interior. That'll make for a dry day here over southern Alaska with most of the clearing occurring down along the North Gulf Coast, south central area, and otherwise up to the north there, mostly cloudy. Flurries is about all this would be. Maybe some light snow, definitely some light snow along that trough axis to the north here across and just north of the Brooks Range over the north slope, but looks pretty good on the Arctic coast with generally VFR, clear skies. And then this next system spreading rain, heaviest will be over the central southern areas there, increasing winds as well, lighter amounts up to the north, but staying warm enough for that to be in the form of rain all the way up into Canada there. And moving on to the forecast lows tonight, shade below zero over the eastern interior, up to the Arctic coast and north slope, 20s here in the west, back down to the teens out toward the northern Bering Sea, and 20s, lower 30s for the southeast coast, and upper 30s, lower 40s for the panhandle. And for Wednesday, tomorrow afternoon, 20s, lower 30s, south central Alaska, and that'll extend all the way back to the southwest coast. Single numbers up to the north there for the Brooks Range. Teens, lower 20s, Tanana Valley, 40s, lower 40s for the panhandle, 30s out west. And for Thursday morning's lows, we've got 0 to 5 below here for the north slope and the Arctic coast, and right around 0 either side, 2 below at Arctic Village, Anaktuvik 6 above, and kind of a plus or minus 0 range here down the eastern interior into the Copper River Basin, 20s in the southwest, lower 30s for the Pribilofs, mid 30s central Aleutians right in this area, falling into the 20s over Bristol Bay area. And then teens, back down into the teens now, a little cooler air coming back into south central Alaska, as well as Prince William Sound, but the southeast coast staying mild with lows maybe in the upper 20s, northern Lynn Canal, Klondike Highway, maybe Haines, to near 40 out along the coast, near 40 down across Prince of Wales Island, Annette, Metlakatla, those locations. And for the Thursday afternoon high temperatures, again 5 to 10, north slope in the Arctic coast, 20s to lower 30s in the southwest here, with temperatures near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s or mid 30s north to lower to mid 40s south for the panhandle. Meanwhile, out over the Aleutians, lower 40s there to near 40 over the Shimia area.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to our flying weather graphics, quite a swath of IFR here from the western Brooks Range and also along the south side of the Brooks Range, southern slopes there off to the east toward Arctic Village, and then southward to northeast Bristol Bay, up along the Alaska Range there, almost into western Cook Inlet, but not quite, and then up into the northern Susitna Valley, possibly the Denali area, back down the Talkeetnas, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and across the Panhandle, and mostly marginal out over the Bering Sea with some VFR for Kodiak Island, portions of the Alaska Peninsula, and maybe east central Aleutians. Tomorrow afternoon, IFR kind of pushes inland here, really banked up along and south of the Brooks Range there, some of that spilling over into the western North Slope. Arctic coast, mostly marginal VFR. Looks like VFR here on the eastern side, though. Marginal for the Bering Sea and more IFR here over the west central Aleutians. And then for Thursday morning, a lot less IFR now along the Panhandle here, just a patch there off the south coast, marginal VFR otherwise. VFR for Yakutat and marginal VFR with areas of IFR here in the interior, south side, upslope areas, Alaska Range, interior mountains here, and definitely along the southern slopes of the Brooks Range. Some IFR out over the southwest interior, and also back out here over the Bering Sea. And then for Thursday afternoon, that area expands and grows and shifts northeastward. It takes a pretty good jog all the way up almost to the southwest coast, definitely in Nunivak Island, back down across eastern Aleutians, and some IFR up over the central interior. Marginal VFR now for the Brooks Range with IFR in the forecast for the entire Arctic coast. And it looks like Alaska Range, maybe in the Kuskokwim Valley, and up toward maybe Nanana, could be VFR. Wrangell Mountains VFR, otherwise marginal Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, and areas of marginal VFR mostly over the central and southern southeast coast. IFR for Anatuvik tomorrow with IFR or marginal VFR, split the difference here. Probably a little bit better for Adigan, a little less moisture showing up there. Lake Clark and Merrill, call it IFR, lowest conditions again, eastern entrances, a little bit better to the west. And for Rainy, marginal VFR, windy IFR south side to marginal VFR as you head on into the valley there through the northern entrance. And Isabel marginal, Mentesta marginal, and Tanita starting out IFR here, especially on the east side, and then gradually improving throughout the day to marginal, possibly, hopefully becoming VFR, but I'll call it marginal at this point. Portage, though, you're going to start out low in the morning, improve gradually, hopefully to VFR in the afternoon. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. For freezing levels, 2,000 feet near Cordova, Cape Yakataga, in across the northern Panhandle, 6,000 feet down there toward Dixon Entrance, so milder air definitely there. Colder air out west, snowfall levels dropping down to sea level there over the western Aleutians, and actually Adak as well. And for the icing swath here of considerable moderate rime icing there over the Aleutians, areas of isolated stuff here in the west, and from southern Alaska down across the Panhandle. Jet stream coming across the Pacific, pretty strong, 160 knots. Splits right here, branch weakening as it heads northward. This one holds together a little bit better up and over this ridging over the British Columbia, 120 knots across the northern Panhandle, and 3,000 or 9,000 feet showing up southerlies 30 to 35 knots across the Panhandle there, 25 eastern Gulf of Alaska, 25 to 30 out of the southwest there, Kodiak Island up to the Kenai Peninsula, and southwest 15 to 20 increases to 20 to 40 here over the eastern part of the state, lighter back here to the northwest, and the next storm out to the west there. Pretty good winds with that, 40 to 50 knots here ahead of the front. Central Aleutians beginning to head in toward the Fox Islands, but the Pribilof's only 15, just 10 up over the northern Bering Sea. 3,000 feet, looking something like this, pretty good. Southeast 55 knots are again ahead of that frontal boundary, and then back around 25 to 35, out to the west falling back to 20 knots toward Shimya. Southwest 15 to 20 here, Bristol Bay, southeast Bering. Increase as you get into the interior up to 30 knots, maybe even 35 through this area, all the way up into the northeast interior, much lighter for the Arctic coast back down through the Bering Strait, and the Panhandle 25 to 30 knots, mostly along and just off the coast. And look for some moderate turbulence to go along with those winds there for the Panhandle here. Considerable moderate, especially for small aircraft below 5,000 feet. Another swath here, Brooks Range southward with those southwest winds. and also back out over the Aleutians from just west of Unalaska out to Shemya.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability will be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so that'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. We've got southeast winds in the forecast for Wednesday on the south coast, just 15 to 20 knots, but seas up to 14 feet. South-southwest at 15 on the north coast with 14-foot seas. Northern Lynn Canal there, or Lynn Canal, south 40, south 25, gust of 40 knots, 5-foot seas. Southeast 25 with gust of 40 for Stevens Passage. Southeast 25-foot seas for Clarence Strait. And for Thursday, more north-northwest at 25 knots here for the north coast. Seas coming down 8 to 9 feet. East 20 knots becomes southeast 30 knots down there off the coast of Prince of Wales Island with 11-foot seas. Stevens Passage southeast 15 and just 10 knots for Clarence Strait southeast 15. Stevens Passage south of 10. Lynn Canal 15. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, look for south winds at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Otherwise, the North Gulf Coast here, southwest at about 20. Pretty uniform, 20 knots all the way back across the Barren Islands with 10 to as high as 13-foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet, south at 10 with 2-foot seas. Southwest 15 here, just a breeze south of the Forelands. And west at 15 there for Kachemak Bay. And then for Thursday, light northeast winds. Northern Cook Inlet, north 15. For the southern area, east 15, Kachemak Bay, pretty light winds now for the Barrens and the western North Gulf Coast at 10 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas. Northeast 20 with 7-foot seas for the eastern coast and just light northerlies in store for Prince William Sound. And for Kodiak Island, 20 knots, both for Shelikof Strait there in the zones here on the east side of Kodiak. 20 knots back to about Castle Cape, and then it's down to 15 from there to Cape Sarachev. And the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, southwest 20, 6-foot seas, right on up in across Bristol Bay. For Thursday, gales come back into the scene here for the Alaska Peninsula, that next front pushing eastward. So 35 knots out of the southeast, higher gusts out of the northern bays here, and seas building to 15 feet. 30 knots southwest of Kodiak and in Bristol Bay. East side of Kodiak still in the light wind area, 15 knots, and Shelikof Strait out of the southeast. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, southerlies at 25 knots, but here toward Nikolsky, increasing southeast 30 to 40 knots. Easterlies, full gales here, 40 to 45 knots, central Aleutians, and going northeast 35 out toward Shimia. Next day, lighter winds, west central Aleutians, still northeast 30 out west, and 30 to 40 knot winds here, the strongest 40 to 45 knotters coming east of Atka and west of Nikolsky, with 40 knots right across Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, southwest winds, 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3-foot seas, east for St. Matthew Island, southwest 20 for the Pribilof, 7-foot seas there, north 20 with 5-foot seas, St. Lawrence Island. And big increase in the winds coming in to these areas on Thursday. St. Paul and St. George, southeast 40 knots, seas building to 15 feet, east 40 there for St. Matthew Island. Gales also increasing by the afternoon. Minimum gales for the southwest coast, seas at about 10 feet. Easterlies 25 for St. Lawrence Island with 7-foot seas. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, we've got southwest breeze at about 10 and east at 10 there for the central coast, going back to north at 10 here for the west side, picking up to about 20 knots from Cape Beaufort to the Bering Strait. And taking a look at Thursday's outlook for these areas, kind of light and variable now here for the Bering Strait northward, becoming west at 10 there around Point Lay, picking up a little bit but not much, 15 out of the west of the central coast and maybe up to 20 knots there for the extreme eastern zone there, Barter Island toward Demarcation Point. For tonight again, this weak low continues to move northward. It'll keep it wet for the North Gulf coastal areas. Mixture of precipitation depending on your elevation, but some could push inland some snow over some areas there, maybe the western Copper River Basin, backing in toward the Susitna Valley, possibly Cook Inlet, and a trough out through here giving an area of snow from, actually some of that might spill into Kodiak Island in the form of snow showers later tonight, but swath of snow extending all the way up to the western Brooks Range. Trough with some weak activity there coming into the Bering Sea, and the front keeps it wet for not only tonight but through tomorrow also for the southeast coast. Areas of snow edge eastward here with that trough, and then the next system, gale force winds and rain coming into the Aleutians, and Thursday that all progresses northeast, another shot of warm air, strong gusty winds, Alaska Peninsula rain to the southwest coast, and dry over southern Alaska. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.
The National Weather Service.